So, as a first technical aspect related to purchasing and supply management, we have talked about how to analyze company spending. In particular, in order to introduce this topic, we have seen that we talk about portfolio management. Meaning that a company used to manage different type of categories, which of course requires a tailored category strategy that, and we will see how to develop a category strategy, but overall, companies cannot manage category independently, but how we define the strategy is a process that needs to be managed in an integrated way. In particular, we have seen that how to define the category strategies for all the categories is called the portfolio management process. The first step in the portfolio management process refers to how to collect data and define the portfolio scope, so the type of category that are included in your analysis. This is fundamental because, again, purchasing is based on spending. Spending means data, means order, means supplier, means numbers. So the first step to perform a portfolio management analysis is to collect data and then understand which type of categories falls within the scope of your analysis. So the first basic two questions that we want to ask in order to arrive to the definition of a category strategy is which information do we have to define the strategy for each category, and among the different categories, which are the one where we want to focus. In particular, we have seen how it works in practice. We have seen that data in purchasing are basically collected at sourcing and supply level, where SAP, so the ERP system, gives the most support to purchasing people. Of course, in sourcing, also other analytics and other applications are used, and we will see it in the course. But basically, the main transactional data are collected at this level and stored in the transactional and in the ERP database. When it's up to analyze this information in order to define and to review the strategy of the different categories that purchasing manage, we apply a data transformation here to be extracted in data warehouse. We use some specific decision-making application that we have seen for us will be Excel, while in practice can be other software which, however, are not universal, and of course they don't give you an understanding on how to execute the analysis. And starting from this, we can perform what is called the strategic sourcing, that is that process that is aimed to define for each category the type of strategy that need to be implemented to manage this category. As a first step, we have seen that we consider as a reference the Crown Insurance case. The Crown Insurance case as a point of start, a database made by 80,000 different orders collected in 2015-2016, and the objective of this case is to arrive to the definition of a category strategy for each category managed by Crown Insurance in an integrated way, meaning that in our analysis we will consider all the categories that Crown Insurance manage according to the scope that we will define in the first step. But as I told you before, starting applying analytical tools and decision-making tools, the first things we have to do is to analyze the quality of our data. So we basically take our Excel database that is made by this record. So for each order we have the code, how many revision has been made, the approval status at the time of extraction of the data, when the order was issued, which is the supplier code to which the order refers to, the value in terms of money of the order, the category code the order refers to, and in particular we have seen that there are two types, the category code and the expenditure type. Here which have two different codes. Then you have the closure status, so see if the system has already closed the order, if the order has been cancelled, when the user has issued a request to create a purchase order, if there has been a closure date, and how much time the buyer has spent in managing this type of order. The first step, again, is understanding the data quality. In particular, in purchasing, the unit of analysis are when I want to define a category strategy, I need to understand, of course, if I have data about the categories, if I have data about the supplier, and if I have data about the buyers that has managed the order. Looking at the database, again, we haven't made anything else than just applying a filter to each record. We need to go through each field, and in particular, is our interest to understand from each field. We have seen if there is a supplier code, if there is an amount in dollar, and if it is properly category coded, and the buyer, to see if there are weird values. And we have seen that in our database, not for the supplier, not for the categories, neither from the buyers, we have weird or values that make us assume that there is like some modification to the initial extracted information need to be made. So our conclusion is that that's a good point of start. So starting from this, we say, okay, that's a database we have discussed in class that is not like the best, because there are some suppliers that are 0, some orders that are 0, but generally speaking, that's a good point of start. No further transformation need to be made. And so we are ready, like, to start our analysis. However, we've seen that before to like deep dive into analysis, so we'll see in the next step, which means applying spend analysis, spend classification, and spend review tool, we need to understand which is the scope of our analysis, so which categories falls within the scope of our analysis. Before doing that on the Excel database and extract the category tree to understand which one, which is the scope of the analysis that we need to be made, I've made this comment about the fact that usually when you extract a purchase order, there is a double classification, which doesn't mean on different level, because in the case of CroneInsurance we have expense type and category code, which is the same classification at different level of detail, but sometimes you have two different fields that classify the object that has been purchased on a different perspective. One is purchasing, following a more managerial perspective, and one is production, which follow a more technical perspective. From case to case, when you extract the purchasing category tree and the production category tree, you need to understand which is the best representation, the best organization of category to be used for your analysis. Because again, production and purchasing have two different views. Production categories can be different from purchasing categories, and usually, like, production categories are considered like superior, because production is how supply chain arrives to the market. So usually the production approach is the one that is more well known in the company. But again, this doesn't mean that they are good from a purchasing perspective. So always extract the purchasing category, like in the example that we have seen here, and compare it with the production category, and understand which is more, which makes more sense to be used as reference framework. Again, this was evident, like, the more you usually use the one that is more detailed. Okay, so in this case, you see that in the case of this company, the production category tree is made by 8 categories at first level, 68 categories at second level, and 0 category at third level, while instead purchasing category tree has 9 categories at fourth level. One of the 9 is like material. 46 categories at second level, like coil materials, piping material, casting, lining anchors, refractory material, and insulation and trussing material, and 116 categories at third level, which are coil tube, coil band, coil fitting, and so on. If we use this as unit of analysis, of course we will consider as our reference the last node of the category tree. So we'll have a detail about 116 categories. In this case, we will stop our unit of analysis at level 2 with 68, which is almost half of what we have here. So this is more detail, and in this case, it makes sense to adopt a purchasing perspective. So when we will refer to definition of the category strategy, we will include the 116 categories that are included, that are extracted from the purchasing category tree. In the case of crop insurance, and I will follow up with a further video about how to extract it, if we want to extract the category tree, our records of reference are these two: category code and expense type, where in particular expense type are the first level categories and category code are the second level, and we have already commented about the fact that this type of expense type are like evident and are understandable. Other civil, medical, and in the database you find a description of what crop insurance buy for each type of category, while instead for what concerns category code, so the specific categories that falls within the scope of each expense type are not too much understandable, because there are just code and they are not, like, their name is not self-explanatory. This is the expense type of crop insurance, and you find a definition. So if you are asked to provide a description of what crop insurance buy, civil include all the service related to real estate, consulting are all the services related to general consultancy, hardware are all the purchases for IT system and products, other are all the remaining goods and service, technical are all the service related to technical consultancy, and so on. So you are aware of which type of expense of category is each one falling within each type of expense type. However, what you don't know in practice is which are the specific categories that are part of each group. But again, in a further video, I will show how to extract from the initial database the purchasing category tree of crop insurance and at different levels, so at first and second level, and how then to define in a more comprehensive way the unit of analysis. So in this video I will review briefly how to use Excel to do basic analysis on the database that we are using, so referring to the crop insurance case. Please, I would like to recall that this is just a technical video, so we'll just show you the command. I won't make too much comments about the data and so on, because I want it to be discussed in class. So the first thing that you have seen with the database is, which refers to task 1 of the case, is to try to display the category tree of crop insurance and try to understand if it is suitable, or if something can be made to make the vision of the category tree smarter and more suitable for our analysis. What we have to use in Excel is a command named pivot table, and you find it here. So insert pivot table, and we'll select all the data, and you will open a new worksheet that will be useful to build your pivot table. Pivot table is a command that allows you to aggregate data coming from a database, so multiple dimension, in order to make some elaboration and to extract some information. In particular, what we want to do as a first task is to try to display the category tree of crop insurance. Here in the field name, we have all the fields that are in the original database, so all the column, and can be displayed in some way through the pivot table. In particular, as the category tree is the hierarchical representation of the purchasing categories for the company, in our case crop insurance, what we are interested in display is, first of all, the expense type, so the first level category, and you see that here the first level expense type, the first level category has appeared on screen, and then we want to know if there is a second level. And in particular, in our case, a second level is represented by what it is called a category code. So if we put the category code as field at the second place in the square rows, we are able to display the category tree of crop insurance, where the green items are the first level categories and the white items are the second level categories. So it means that FSIE is one of the categories which is part of the general or the first level category named civil. Of course, as we already talked in class about that, this representation is not so useful because the scope of our analysis should be the second level category, which are just characterized by a code. If we want to make this representation smarter, as we don't know the translation of the code, we can try to at least keep the name of the expense type in the code. So what we can do is to go to the database and create a new column named new code, and one of the possible options will be concatenate in a single string expense type, so this field and the category code. If you type concatenate text 1, text 2, you see that you have created another category, another field for your database. You drag down to all the field in all the rows in the database, and now what you can do is to go back to the pivot, and instead of selecting category code, you don't see displayed here the field, because every time you make some modification to the database, to make this appear in the pivot you need to refresh. And now that we have refreshed, the new code should appear. No, that's not true. Oh yeah, no, it doesn't appear because data are not selected. You see, if you here, you see that data here are not selected. So to include the new rows, just type O, and now you will see that new code, here it is. If I select new code, now you see that there is the same representation of the previous one, with the difference that now the second level categories are still making any sense, but at least they refer to the civil expense, to the consulting, and so on. So if we keep, when we will punch out the first level, we will have a list of second level category, which at least we were able to refer to the first level.